Good morning, everybody. We are going live today with Dale Clevenger, and I am starting a Mondays series with Dale. Dale is just one of my favorite people in the whole world to talk to, and he's a really great friend of mine, a mentor. He's been my teacher, and he was my predecessor as principal horn in the Chicago Symphony. So we're going to go live with Dale now, and I'm to Dale about his impact with his students and his teaching and his philosophies on playing. Um, Dale, good morning. How are you?
Fine, thank you. How you doing, Dave?
Hey, fantastic. I got a little bit of a thing with my eye. I got a little bit of a wink. It's I don't know what happened. It's like a follicle that's blocked, and
Yeah.
so it made my eye like all red and swollen. So if it looks like I'm winking at you, it's it's just I'm not
I'll take
flirting with you.
I'll take it.
So, I just wanted to talk to you about teaching because you have taught so many of the great horn teachers in America and throughout the world. Your students are in major orchestras all over the country, all over the world, and I'll just kind of back up and tell you about the first lesson that I had with you. It was in 2007. I'd never met you before, but I'd heard stories from teachers of mine who'd studied with you. I know David Brockett had studied with you a couple times. He'd come over from Cleveland, and he just, said you had this way of putting things into words, which were so kind of, eloquent and also inspiring. And then I remember I worked with Eric Ruske, and Eric was obviously a student of yours, and so I felt like I had to come to the mountaintop myself, and I had to come meet you. Yes, our jur says Dave Brockett is the best. Our jur Juice 11 says Dave Brockett is the best, and he really is. And so for me, when I came up to Winnetka for the first time, I remember I walked in your house, and you had two cats, Bonnie and Clyde. And I remember Clyde wanted to be on my shoulder. I held him, and instantly he climbed on my shoulder and was like standing on my head. And I thought that was like he was like, "I'm Clyde, kitty. I will stand on your shoulder now." It was really a really fun moment. I remember that. And what struck me was that instantly you asked me, why did I play horn? And one of the things that stuck out for me was like, well, why do I play horn? Well, I never really thought of it that much. I like it. But you said, no, but what's specific about the horn? What's that no other instrument has? And could you talk about that? You led me to say that the sound of the horn was so special.
Well, whenever I have a new student, whether it's for one lesson or it's going to be a series of lessons, I want to establish some kind of relationship. And since this student is playing the same instrument that I am, and I know why I chose the instrument, I'm always curious to know why anybody chooses the horn to play. And sometimes they will say, well, it's my expression of playing music and blah, blah, blah. And I say, well, you can do that on the oboe or the cello. Why
Yes.
the horn? Why particularly the horn? And eventually we get down to the bedrock of why all horn players play the horn. It's because of the horn's unique tone quality. There's nothing else like it in this world.
Wow.
And when I've said this before already on your show here. When my father took me to symphony concerts, I looked over the whole orchestra and my eye went to the horn. And eventually I discovered a fantastic discovery on how that horn sounds. And I don't know why, but I said to myself, I want to play that instrument. Period. I'm still asking why. I'm really, you know, yes, you can be infatuated with lots of instruments. I mean, a well played, beautifully played trumpet is fantastic. There's nothing like it. The same with every instrument. But the horn tone quality grabbed me, and it never let go, and it still hasn't.
Wow.
So when I have a new student, I'm curious, how old are they? How long have you been playing horn? Where are you from? You know, to get an idea of what kind of, some people are from absolutely podunk, like me. You know, Chattanooga was not a music center at all.
Yeah.
But there's some extremely famous musicians, jazz, symphony, and others from towns you'd never heard of. You wonder, how in the world did they find that instrument? How did they get into this business, of music? Well, the again, another bottom line is they do a lot of listening. I listened as soon as I realized how much I liked the symphony orchestra. I started buying records and listening to the radio if there were a symphony orchestra on there. And the more I listened, the more I liked. The more I heard this horn sound, the more I had to play it. Now, I'm curious if new students or students who spend time with me, if their pardon me, if their fascination and infatuation with the horn and the sound of the horn is similar to mine. Sometimes it is, and sometimes it's not. I'm curious to know if they have the same passion about playing. I'm curious to know if they want to play in a major orchestra, or just an orchestra, or a band, or just to teach, or whatever. I want to know about my students. So I ask these questions, you know, why do you play the horn?
Yeah.
It's always the sound. So the sound is the starting point, the pivotal point of what we do on this instrument. It's been that way since the horn was invented.
Yes.
Whatever kind of horn it was, whether it was a Baroque horn or before that, there's you know, the bucina horn in Rome. This was in 2,000 years ago. The thing called a lure, L-U-R, in Scandinavia. Big, you know, there are two of them on the door of the capital of Norway or Denmark.
Or the shofar. The shofar,
yeah.
you know, the ram's horn.
Yeah. And then there's, you know, all kinds of horns, literal animal horns and so forth. And they make a sound. And the sound originally was for a signal of some kind, you know. And when they started making a horn with brass, or in the case of the French, the Swiss Alps, the wooden horn, but the sound is unique. And that affects many people, affected me in a very special way. So students, I have a connection with them because we like the same thing, and we like it for practically the same reason. And not everybody does the same thing with the horn, but you know, you can play it and you can enjoy it and have fun, and you can do that all the way to the top. By the way, I'll put a statement that Joe Singer told me after the moment that I told him that I had been engaged for Chicago. He said, Dale, it's very lonely at the top.
Oh man. Yeah.
And that can be a neutral statement. It can be a positive statement, and it also can imply negativity. And it implies all of those.
Wow.
There were people who were so happy for me they couldn't see straight and blah blah blah, and other people said in public, you know, he'll never make it.
Wow.
So extremes.
Yeah, it's
But that I was lucky enough to be able to realize a dream. And I would wish that on anybody who plays the horn. It's there's nothing like it. But you can have great fun and enjoyment playing the horn on other levels.
Yeah.
Jazz horn players. The wonderful jazz horn player in Italy, Giovanni Holper.
Do you know Arkady Schicklper?
Sure.
Yeah, Arkady's
Sure.
phenomenal.
And you know, and they played symphony and they played jazz and so forth. And there's lots of different levels.
Yeah.
But the reason we play is because it's unique. Now, you wanted to know about my teaching. If you play, and you're going to find it out too. I got another piece of advice from my other teacher, Forrest Stanley. He says, okay, you got a great job. Play your horn for a while. And don't teach, don't write any books, just play. You can, because there's plenty of time to do the other stuff, because your concentration level needs to be at its peak all the time.
Yes.
So I didn't start actually teaching on a permanent level or big level until 4 or 5 years after I was in the orchestra. Sometimes people would come and have a lesson. My first student, period, was Phil Myers.
You got to be kidding.
No.
So the principal horn of the New York Philharmonic,
First student.
Wow, unbelievable.
He's from, I think he's from South Bend, Indiana, or somewhere like that.
Yeah.
And you know, he called me up, and he's a tall, skinny young man who's very, very talented.
Yeah.
And you know, he had heard me play some concerts and decided he wanted to pick my brain or to know what I had to say teaching about the horn. The second student I had was a fellow named Mark Tenicus. He was from around Chicago. He became solo horn of Denver.
Wow.
So the very two first people that I taught were, you know, became solo horn players, big names.
Can I interrupt you?
Sure.
So this is, I mean, this is a great debate. Now, did you get good students, or were you able to take your students and help them cultivate what they needed to get those jobs? Was it some of both? Was it a combination?
It's a combination. For some reason, I was very lucky. I had students who did not have the drive, motivation, the talent, the gift, or the willingness to do the work.
Yeah, that's what it comes down to, the willingness to do the work. Yeah.
I had students like that, and some of them even played professionally and decided they didn't like it.
Yeah.
I had others, another was this, took auditions and didn't make it, and he became a dentist. Another one became a psychologist. So I've had both sides of the fence. I was lucky to get some very, very talented and driven students, especially when I was at Northwestern. Yeah. And I can't, you know, when you have 8 students a year for 30 years or 25, I don't even remember how long I was there. You have, sooner or later, you're going to get some who are going to make it and some who are not, and some who are in the middle of the road. And so, but a lot of those guys came in there. I remember Eric Rusk's first day with me. He was 14.
No kidding.
You know, he came in and he was a student of a friend of mine who lived nearby me, and I also played extra in the horn, Gene Chaussel. And, you know, he had a lesson with me, and I thought, wow, what a talent. Plays better than I did at 14. At least I thought that. So I had others like that. It is a combination of lucky, that talent, you know, they want to study with you. They want to know what you have to say about their playing and their possibilities. And I had lots of good ones, lots and lots and lots. So I was going to give you a little sort of a definition, my definition, or part of it, of what teaching actually is.
Wow.
Basically, teaching is giving back. I was given a gift of loving music and loving the horn and having a good ear, being able to play pretty well in tune.
Yeah.
And those are gifts. They're not talents, they're gifts. And they come from the Almighty. Or they come, I believe that. Yeah. Other people can believe what they want.
Yeah.
But then if you read the book, The Talent Code, you realize that you start building on these gifts.
Yeah.
And your talent grows exponentially, day by day, week, month, year by year. And in 10 years, you have something. Some people have more than others, and some people have less. That's life. Mm. So giving back, giving information, and hopefully some inspiration. Well, and the other things that teachers must be able to do, they must be able to recognize problems.
Yes, diagnose.
Diagnostician, right? Sometimes being a psychologist as well, you know.
Yeah.
And there's so much lousy teaching out there. People.
Well, Dale, can I back up? May I back up? So when you say part of your job is to diagnose the problems and part of your job is to do the psychology, I feel like for me, what has given me those insights to give back is by looking at myself. You know, it's like I'm able to look at a problem on the horn and I say, why isn't this working? And if I don't know, if I can't figure it out, then I'll find someone who does know and I'll ask. And then also if I have something kind of like a psychological thing, I'll kind of look at that and kind of, ask questions to myself or ask questions. Is that something that you feel like you've been able to do with yourself? Is a lot of your experiences have helped you become a better teacher?
Of course. Of course. I was playing in an orchestra, as I told you before, when I was 16.
Yeah.
And regular concerts, Chattanooga Symphony, fourth horn. And then I played 3 years with the Wheeling Symphony, solo horn. Every year, 6, 8, 10 concerts. And in 3 years, that's 25 or 30 concerts on solo horn.
Wow.
I reconfirmed to myself that this is what I want to do. And then I proceeded to try to audition, do my best to get good enough to pass an audition to be hireable. And I only wanted to play first horn. I didn't want to play in the section. The first horn has most of the solos. I enjoyed that. But back to the teaching, recognizing problems and then being able to solve them. A lot of teachers can't solve problems. They can't solve what it's difficult for them to solve problems that they never had themselves. I've had most of the problems. I don't consider myself one of those natural players. I had to work for everything. I changed my own embouchure. So I have no problem in adjusting or changing somebody's embouchure because I know that it worked with me.
Well, you helped me. All right, so I'm going to back up. So when I came to see you, you said, now you play great. You can get all over the horn, but your sound is going to stop you from getting to the highest level. And here is what I would suggest for you. You diagnosed with me that I had, I was spreading my lips really thin before I'd play.
Yeah.
and I'm making a thin sound, and I had great flexibility all over the horn, but I couldn't play loud. And you said, I would love it if you could identify what makes the sound on the horn. And for us, it's the lip, right? The lip is what vibrates.
Yeah.
And then you said, now what contains that lip? Well, a mouthpiece.
Right.
So if I contain this lip, then I have more vibration. And the more lip I have in the mouthpiece, the more tone I'll have. And
Up
so
to a point. Yeah.
you explained it to me. And then over the next course of, I don't know, that was in 2007 when we met. And then by 2010, we went through this embouchure adjustment. It wasn't really a change, it was more of an adjustment. And I trusted you because you'd done that with Eric Ruske. You'd done it maybe with Bill VerMeulen, I'm not sure. But you were the person, Eric said, if you're going to go through it, you're in good hands. And so I trusted you, and we did it. And then I got more lip in the mouthpiece, and then I had more tone. And I feel like I was also able to play louder and with a good quality sound.
Yeah.
So you showed me how to make a good sound, and then after that, it was all these little lessons around that, but how to keep that sound in all dynamics and all registers.
Well, there are many teachers who do their students a disservice by talking about how much pressure to use.
Mm.
And whenever a teacher says to a student, and I get it all the time, don't use so much pressure. Watch how much pressure you use. Be careful, you might be using too much pressure. Blah, blah, blah. I never mention how much pressure to use or not to use. And I never talk about that. Because there is pressure. The function of the mouthpiece is an isolating factor. It isolates lips so that when air can go through it, it can go through as freely as possible, provided you have plenty of air. And that's another big problem. Students have to learn how to take in a full load of air like a tuba player would.
Yes.
They don't have any problem taking in air because they know if they don't do it, they can't play. Our students take little tiny bits of air and they think they can play a long phrase on it, and they think they can play beautifully, and they can't. And if nobody tells them that this sound is not acceptable, it's not good, it could be much better. And this is the reason, this is probably, or one of the reasons why, don't tell your students to use no pressure or less pressure. Just leave that off. You press it in to the teeth.
Yeah.
And then you strengthen this and you push back.
Yes.
And that balance is what gets a beautiful tone. And if it's not beautiful, it's not right. Yes, it's possible to use too much pressure. It's also possible to use too little.
Yes.
You have to balance that. And then the amount of air, the kind of air. They talk about warm air and cool air and so forth. Fine. Any air that comes out of your lungs is going to be warm. I don't think that makes much difference. You can think it, but it's not going to change anything. And then there are those teachers who say, don't move this when you breathe. Don't move your shoulders when you breathe. Be careful not to move this. Push out your stomach. Deadly. Firm everything up. Or make it rigid or strong. Or some teachers will push against the gut. My teacher did that once.
Once.
And I never paid any attention to it because it wasn't what helped. It's a balance of a lot of things that are happening. And if you isolate any one of those things and blow it out of proportion, it's deadly.
Mm.
It's a balance of lots of things. It takes, first of all, you have to think, what kind of sound do you want to play?
Yes.
What kind of sound is necessary with this composer, with this orchestra, with this section, in this concert hall? And you know, with this piece, what kind of sound is necessary tonight? Last night we played in a very dry concert hall. Opera orchestras, they play in pits. Pits are typically very dry sound. They have to do what they can to make the sound warmer. If they spend a lot of time talking about all that, that's the things you're thinking about while you're playing. You can't think about that. Mm. You know, you think about the line and the effect and the beauty and, you know, and the projection of your sound and what the audience is hearing. And I want them to be comfortable and blah, blah, blah. And how beautiful this instrument is that I'm playing. All the nice positive things. But you can't think about. I'll tell you one other thing that's not good for teaching, but teachers are going to do it. They're going to say it, especially voice teachers. So breathe from the diaphragm. The diaphragm has been working perfectly well since the day they were born. Yeah. You take a breath, it goes down. You blow out, it goes up. You cannot control the diaphragm. You can think about it, but you can't control it. It's about as logical as my saying to you, you try to do this now, right now. David, I want you to take a deep breath. Deep breath. And while you're breathing, move your spleen to the left.
I don't even know where my spleen is.
That's the point. Most people don't know where their diaphragm is. You can't control your spleen.
Yeah.
You can't control the diaphragm.
Yeah.
You take a deep breath, it goes down. You blow out, it goes back up. You can take a deeper and deeper breath, or you can take a shallow breath. But the diaphragm moves fine. Don't talk about it. I never mention diaphragm. I never talk about pressure or no pressure. Yeah. If things with experimentation, trial and error, and a good ear and reasonable practice, you can learn to play a beautiful sound. And a beautiful sound is achieved with a proper amount of good air.
Now, Dale, you always
therefore Arnold Jacobs, as Dan said and repeated, it's wind, air, fuel, wind and song. You think about the song, you take in the wind. And you know, then there can be problems with tonguing. There can be problems. A lot of people stretch their lips when they play.
That was me.
It's easy to listen to what one sounds like if you put the mouthpiece on that rather than on this. This is the way Herseth used to do. Oh, he put the mouthpiece on fleshy, relaxed lips. He pressed it in. He strengthened here, and he had plenty of fuel. It's pretty much that simple.
Wow.
It's not so simple when a student has been told, don't move this when you play. Don't do that when you play. Be careful not to use pressure when you play. Yeah. I want to put all those teachers in prison. Because they don't know what the they're talking about.
Well, I mean, you know, it's simple, right? It becomes one of these things where you can push in to fleshy lips, and the lips give us tone, right? Correct. And then when we take a big breath, you know, talk about Arnold Jacobs a little bit. Talk about what Arnold Jacobs, you know, taught you and what he gave to you as far as breathing and as far as inspiration on that.
Arnold Jacobs was like an amateur doctor. He actually, early in his years, he actually studied with a doctor, cadavers.
Wow.
He knew where the muscles were, where the sinews were, and what lungs work, and so he knew exactly what was moving and what should move, and when air goes in, what happens to your lungs, and where the diaphragm was. He never talked about any of that stuff. He talked about, how do you want to sound? How would you like to sound? Imagine that sound, and you sing literally and figuratively on the horn. You sing. That's some of my students, especially in Italy, who play in operas. That's what they hear all the time. Songs, melodies, tunes. And when you match that, you know, and you have a beautiful sound, your idea is to sing a phrase. That's what we're all about anyway, on every instrument. It's getting a vibration and singing a phrase, singing figuratively. And I have a student, Luca Benucci, who sings literally himself and has his students sing. When I think of it, I have my students do the same. Yes, they're embarrassed to us. I sing for them sometimes. And anything that will help you play a beautiful phrase, anything, listening to people who play beautifully. And I say play beautifully. There are hundreds and hundreds of technical wizards out there.
Yeah.
Hundreds. There are very few people who can make me cry because of the way that they play, of the sound that they get, of different tone colors for different composers or different situations that you're playing in, different orchestras or different horn, different instrument. And this is, you know, a lot of listening, incredible listening. I was listening when I was 14, listening to records. I bought records as fast as I could get them and listened to them. My son Jesse does exactly the same thing. I have many students who that's all they listen to. I have a student in Italy, in Spain, who has every record that I ever made.
Gustavo. Hi, Gustavo, if you're watching.
Hi, Gus.
Yeah.
I should say hi to my wife in Italy as well. She's dealing with the same kind of loneliness and having shut in as everybody else is. Hi, Giovanna.
Yeah, I mean, Giovanna's a good friend of ours, and you know, obviously, she's your wife, but Giovanna also plays in an opera orchestra, so she hears all sorts of singing all the time.
Yeah, and we're separated. We don't like that, but it's necessary at this time.
Yeah.
So, anyway, students of all levels of talent and gift, they need to do a lot of listening. They need to take my suggestions. They need to know when it's not a suggestion, this is a command. Do it.
Yeah.
And then the best way that I can teach is not talking, is giving an example, playing for them. Therefore, at my age, I'm continuing to play as good as I can. Could I sit in an orchestra and play first horn? Probably. How would it be like it was 30 years ago? Probably not. But musically, yes. You know, I would miss some notes. Big deal. I never worried about missing notes anyway. That was not an issue. I took risks.
Yeah.
And I had a great time doing it. Most of the time it paid off. Once in a while, I would slam a really good note, you know, and the critics would write about it. Oh, they had to tell the world that Clevenger missed a note.
But didn't Herzog used to say, you know, hey, big deal. It gives them, you know, like it lets them know that I'm like, you know, human or something like that.
Yeah.
He's like, you know, yeah.
It's an audience will forgive a missed note or two.
Yeah.
They won't forgive being bored.
Yes. Yes. Wow.
They just won't.
Dale, so after our first lesson, I went down to Symphony Hall, and I remember Alice was, you know, in the middle of our lesson. Alice was like, "Dale, your hair's a mess. You got to get down to Symphony Hall. What are you doing? It's like 6 p.m." And you would have spent all night with me if you could have. But I remember that she had, you know, she said, "All right, now I'm sorry, your lesson is over. We got to go." You know, so you went down to Symphony Hall and you played Rosenkavalier Suite. And I'll never forget the solo that you had. That solo, it took my breath away, and it brought tears to my eyes because first of all, I'd met you and I'd had this inspirational lesson with, like, I was just like, now I want to sound like that. I can achieve a sound like that, and I can make music like that. And here's what I need to do. And then I heard you demonstrate that in the symphony hall. And I remember, like, time stopped for me. My breath was gone, and I was just instantly welled up with tears. That's what your playing did for me. I mean,
Now, I appreciate that, and that's what I would like to do for everybody.
yeah.
But you as a player and as my successor, you need to realize, and you do, and everybody else needs to realize, you are your own person. You are your own personality. You didn't have the same conditioning that I did. And to be able to play similar, that you can do. I can play similar to anybody because I can imitate.
Yeah.
But you need to give your voice and your song and your inspiration. And there should come a time, you know, when you don't think about playing like Dale, like I thought about playing like Bruno Janicki.
Wow.
You know, and a conductor told me, he says, play like Clevenger.
Well, I do feel like that's one of the things that I've learned from you is that, hey, like, have your own voice.
Right.
And I think, you know, and whatever your voice is, I mean, at the end of the day, I would just be an okay copy of you, right? But I can be the best version of David Cooper, right? And that's what I try to teach to all my students. And I think you taught to me is, like, be the best version of yourself. And
Exactly.
you know,
Exactly.
all of your students have, you know, they have the tradition, but Eric is the best version of Eric.
Exactly.
Bill VerMeulen is the best version of Bill.
They are their own personalities, and they
Yes.
have become their own people, and you know, more power to them.
Yeah.
It's great. You know, it's not. I don't. I play for them to imitate and to hear, but not so that they could be a carbon copy of me.
Yes.
That's not the point at all, because nobody is. You know, there are some that are better. I've had students with a prettier sound than I have. And when I find out that they have it, I want to imitate them.
Well, when the end of that lesson, what made me so, what just really stuck out in my mind was that you said you have good instincts and trust your instincts. And I remember, like, that was the first time someone had given me the power to be like, hey, you know what to do. You know what you like. You know what you don't like. Use your instincts. And, like, you gave me the freedom to create my own voice.
Right.
And, like, that, could you talk a little bit about instinct and how we can develop those?
Oh boy. The definition of instinct is, you know, off the cuff here. I'm not a psychologist or particularly a philosophical person. You probably get a better answer from that from my son, who reads like a fiend all the great literature of the world. But your instinct is how you feel about something at the moment, and you go for it. You just do it. And you learn instinct by wanting to learn it, or think about it, and by experience. And that's a very difficult thing to describe. There are probably others who would do a much better job of describing instinct. I mean,
Well, I think you develop what you like and what you don't like by listening,
yeah.
and by trying. And I've seen you, like, you know, listen. What we played together this last summer in Ravinia, and you know, I have to say it was like one of, like, the highlights of my career to sit next to you. I mean, it was like, it was so special having, you know, grown up listening to you, like, studied with you a little bit, and then getting to sit on the stage. And we played Tchaik 4, which was the first piece I heard the Chicago Symphony ever play. and you were sitting next to me, and I just felt like at a certain point I was like, man, this is so cool. I'm sitting next to Dale Clevenger, and then being like, well, I gotta play this. I gotta nail my job. But what I remember is just like, yeah, it was such a special moment for me to sit next to you. But you were listening so intently to our principal clarinet player, Steve Williamson, and you said, can you listen to what he does? Can you imagine what he does? Well, isn't that inspiring? You were inspired by that.
I was, absolutely. I'm inspired to think about it. But
Yeah.
and it's a compliment to Steve. It's an extremely high level of musicianship. But I've worked with lots and lots of people who have a similar kind of unbelievable level of musicianship, not only in the orchestra, but in chamber music and a few, very few conductors.
Mm.
You know, our respect for conductors is higher when we find out what really kind of musician they are.
Mm.
Schulte had not played the piano for 35 years, except to study a score. And he started working up the piano and playing the scales and so forth. And he actually played a Mozart concerto with us, actually a double concerto. Wow. The orchestra was absolutely astounded at how gorgeous it was and how fine and refined his piano playing was, which tells you what kind of musician he is. Our estimation of his, our esteem for him went up exponentially because he had done it as a pianist. So many conductors have never played anything anywhere. They just wave a stick. They can be good doing that, but you know, and instinct. I have to think about this one, and maybe if I come up with something really profound, we can talk about it on the next our next effort.
Well, I guess for me, instinct is that voice inside of yourself. It's a feeling. It's like, I like this, I don't like this, and why do I like this? And then when I realize I like something, it's like, okay, now let's see if I can recreate it. And it's like it's just knowing yourself, like what we do in the practice room. And I feel like when I do the work and I really listen, I can really come up with, I like this, and this is why I like it, and I want more of that.
Yeah.
So for me, I think the instinct is something that obviously I've had to develop, but I've also had to trust myself because I've done the work.
Yeah. And we're lucky in a big orchestra, and soloists are also, but in a big orchestra, we play a concert 3-4 times.
Mm.
We can experiment and do different things
Yes.
each time.
Yeah.
And I never played anything exactly the same 2 concerts in a row. I knew that I was doing something a little different, and usually on purpose, because I wanted to.
Could you talk about when you played Brahms 2 with Maestro Barenboim?
Yeah. He and I would have lots of chats backstage. His office was an open office. So I went in one time when we were playing Brahms second, and we were going to take it on tour to Europe. And I said, we were talking about interpretation and so forth, and he was telling me what pianists he grew up with, Margaret Argerich, and what great artists they were, and so on. And I said, Daniel, for example, we're going to do Brahms second. I've played the piece at least 50, 75 times before you got here, and we're going to do it again. But there are a couple of places in there which Brahms repeats himself. And it can sound beautiful if you go T da 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 da. It's like a siren. I said, I try to do something a little bit different on that, and sometimes I can't figure out what to do, so I go on automatic pilot and just let it come out. He said, Dale, what's happening in the basses while you're playing that solo? I said, frankly, I forgot if I knew. He says, just check the score. He says, look here. And he had his score with him. He says, look here in the score. You start playing on an E concert. Dee da da dee da. The basses are playing the tonic. And in your third bar, they start ascending chromatically. Da 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 dee da, which implies a little crescendo. Just the fact that the basses are going up. He says, why don't you do a diminuendo on the first two bars, and then on the third and fourth bar and there on out in your first sequence, your first apex of the phrase, do a long legato crescendo. I said, I'll try. I did it, and I thought, wow, finally something that I can feel that I've done, you know, all this countless times I've played the Brahms second. I'm finally doing a little bit more, making a little bit more out of it. And so that's what I do. I don't do the same amount of decrescendo or crescendo each time. As I say, that depends on the concert hall and how I feel at the moment and how fast the piece is and who's conducting it and so forth. But we had discussions like that, and it was always the music first, check the whole score, what's going on with you. Wow. And it's a fascinating way of playing, of functioning. And these are the things I think about when I'm playing. Wow. I'm not thinking about fingerings. Yes. I'm not thinking about hand position. Yeah. You know, I got to have plenty of air to get through those phrases.
Yes, yes.
Because the first one is a long one, and the last one is even longer.
Yes.
But to me, it's fun to think about music this way. They're finally cutting my grass. Good.
One of my mentors used to say, for every technical problem, there's a musical solution.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I absolutely agree.
Yeah.
That's why I say music dictates the technique.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. And didn't Mr. Barenboim say, one of the great pleasures of being on tour with you, with Brahms too, was that I got to hear it so many different ways at the end of the tour. He's like,
his words were, I have to tell you, Dale, it was fascinating on this tour just to listen and to anticipate what is he going to do a little bit different in this performance than he did last night. And it was always something.
Wow. Wow. That's a huge compliment. Could you talk about the masterclass with Meister Barenboim? And I'm going to be moving around. My battery's getting a little bit low, so I'm going to grab my charger from the other room.
Yeah, that's okay.
So could you talk about the masterclass with Meister Barenboim and the masterclass that he did with Lang Lang and Jonathan Biss, and why that is such an important masterclass for your students and for your studio?
Yeah. Who was the first person that you said?
Lang Lang.
Lang Lang, yeah. Well, Barenboim was and is an extremely highly respected artist on the piano. And that's, you know, when he's playing the piano, he's at home. He's really at home, even more than when he's conducting. Because he was playing the piano when he was, what, 3 years old or something. Yeah. But because of his father and because of the schooling that he had, his father was his first teacher a long time, and the schooling that he had and the association with varying, the people that he studied conducting with, the big teacher was Igor Markevich. And then he studied in Siena with, the same time, with Zubin Mehta and maybe Abado. Wow. They were all there about the same time. You imagine the conversations they would have about music. My gracious. Wow. And every word, hey, kitty, look at that.
That's fluffy.
Every thought out of his head was a musical thought relating to the piece, the composer, the time it was written, the what's going on during that time in the world, etc.
Mm.
One of the most revealing things he ever said to me was, and it's really quite simple. He says, Dale, you know, I recorded all Mozart piano stuff in my late teens and early 20s in London.
Wow.
Played and conducted all the Mozart concertos. He says, and they're good. And I said, the world knows that, Daniel. Then he said, then later on in life, I started studying Mozart operas. And everything, it really opened up for me. I started to really understand Mozart.
Wow.
And that affects the way I play Mozart concerto now, which is better musically than it was, not just because of experience, but because of studying those operas. And Mozart wrote 14 operas, and they're all about 3 hours long or more, and they're all about relationships. And opera is an opera because they have singers, and singers sing words, which are a story. And what's in the story? Relationships, love life, comedy, etc. And he says, you learn from all of this. Now, Mozart wrote thousands of melodies, simple, elegant, beautiful melodies in those operas. And many of those melodies are in every other concerto that he ever wrote. Piano, horn, violin, flute, oboe, and songs and so forth. And he says the relationship, the connection between the meaning of the operas and what he was trying to say and those melodies and where they reappear. Who was it? Picasso said, a good artist borrows, a great artist steals.
Yeah.
Mozart stole from himself. He plagiarized.
Yeah.
Why not? Composers have been doing it for centuries. But he did it with himself.
He had so much music he could steal from himself.
Correct.
Wow.
Now, a conversation like this is eye-opening. It's ear-opening. It's fantastic to learn that my friend, my colleague, my boss, VerMeulen, thinks this way. Wow. And he can demonstrate it on the piano.
Yeah.
Like Mozart himself, as far as I'm concerned. And there are other really great Mozart piano players, really great. I don't think any better than Danielle. That's my opinion, though. And we had conversations like this backstage, on tour, in restaurants, at parties, blah, 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 for over 30 years. Because he started with us when he was 28. I was 30.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, what was it like to play the Brahms trio with him?
Undescribable. And yet, he was a human being. Because in one of the rehearsals, you know, when the horn and the violin goes pop 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 pop.
Yes, yes.
The piano goes da 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 dee da 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 dee da da dee da da.
Yes. The last movement.
Itzhak and I were playing ya da 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 da, and we were right precisely there. Daniel he rushed da 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 dee, and I thought, oh my, he's rushing. What can we do? You know, because that's not going to go on the, you know, and maybe he wouldn't do it a second time, but I had to figure out a way. but the three of us, he wasn't the boss. We were three equal entities playing.
But
And
but he's also your boss.
Yeah. I said,
Yeah.
Daniel, would you like Itzhak and me to go with you in that figure at number so-and-so? He says, oh, am I rushing? He says, no, never mind. I'm not going to, I won't do that. It was over, finished. I simply asked him a question. I didn't make a suggestion. I didn't say, Daniel, you're rushing that.
Yeah.
That's not the right thing to say, and to the wrong person.
Yeah.
I mean, it may have been true, but but how you communicate with one another. Mm. I told him before we ever started, I said, Itzhak has played this trio many times, and he recorded it with great people, Barry Tuckwell and Ashkenazi.
Yeah.
I said, in my opinion, it's too fast.
Yeah.
Because I don't think that Brahms had that speed in mind. I don't think they would have been able to do it so good on a natural horn. And I don't think it played that much on a natural horn, by the way.
Yeah.
But if something sounds frantic or a little frantic, it's probably too fast.
Yes.
And I said, I don't hear it that fast. Can we keep the tempo a little bit less? He says, leave it to me. And the tempos that we did were, Itzhak didn't like it. The second rehearsal, he came in and sat down, and Itzhak said, well, how slow are we going today? Daniel didn't even acknowledge the question. And we stayed with the tempo that we decided. I asked Barry Tuckwell, I says, how did you go so fast? And he says, I got outvoted. And, there are three people.
Yeah.
Well, it's easier, and string players like to go. That tempo on a horn is frenetic.
It's kind of impressive that they did it in that tempo. But yeah, I'm really grateful I don't have to play it.
Fine. There are people who are impressed with speed.
Yes.
They are impressed with ultra technique. I'm impressed with a gorgeous sound, a beautiful phrase, a beautiful line. Everybody, all professionals can play enough technique to do their job. That's not in question. Everybody. Some have a little more than others, and so forth. Some people have a little more personality than others. Some people have a little less.
Yeah.
You don't criticize them because of their personality. It's not. That's it. We're about to get cut off here.
We are. Dale,
yeah.
I have to say, it's always so fun to talk to you. I learn so much every time I do. I come away so inspired, and I'm sure many other people around the world listening, horn players, musicians, and I know we have music lovers who are just watching today, such as my great friend Joanne Bober from Dallas. She's watching, and I mean, just thank you again for your time, and thank you again for your friendship, for your inspiration. Dale, I love talking to you.
To all the horn players out there, play pretty.
Thank you.
Play beautiful. Make people cry because of the way you phrase it, because of your sound and the way you phrase it.
And yeah, I just a couple other hellos real quick that we need to say. We need to say hello real quick to Jennifer Gunn. Jen Gunn is our piccolo player, and next week we're hopefully going to do a chat with her. And
that'll be great.
Yeah,
she's the best of the best.
The best piccolo player I've ever heard. I can't wait.
The best of the best. I never heard her do anything.
Yeah.
That I said, why is she doing that?
Yes, I know. And the piccolo is really hard to play. It's really, really hard.
Great.
Yeah, so
it's nice to see you today. If all going well, if I'm still alive and you are next week, we'll do it. Stay in, folks. Wash your hands. Blah blah blah. Don't get sick.
Thanks, Dale. Huge hugs. I'll see you soon.
Ciao.
Yeah. See ya. Bye bye.